Well, hello again, everyone. This is Jeff Adler, continuing my video series, Why I'm Right 2.0, which follows my book from a few years ago. Um, Today I wanted to talk about something that has to do somewhat with um, the political environment that we're all seeing today in Washington. Um, as many of you know, I am not and have not been the world's biggest Trump supporter. I did not vote for him in the primary, and I did not think he would make a great president, at least not in terms of the overall Republican picture. Why, and all my reasons I can get into another time. But I've been somewhat surprised by some of his successes. For as a conservative, the things that are important to me are reducing the size of government and waste, fraud, abuse, corruption, the swamp of D.C., and the power and influence over everyone's lives, lowering taxes, helping out the military and veterans of the military, closing down illegal immigration, kicking ass in foreign policy instead of apologizing for everything, opening up energy reserves of all types of energy, go for it, be less dependent on foreign energy, etc., etc. I mean, and I didn't think Trump had the wherewithal to cover most of these subjects without a strong learning curve or a long learning curve. And it turns out I was not accurate on some of my predictions. He turned out to have surprised me. The economy is doing as probably pretty well. I mean, I thought it probably would do at least as decently as it is now. Maybe it's actually better than I thought it would be, simply if he kept his promises. But the left in our country is absolutely apoplectic right now. They are showing all their true colors. They have gone over the deep end. They have completely lost their freaking minds. It's hilarious to watch, but it's also getting to a point where they become dangerous. They become a problem. Well, they've always been dangerous, but now it's comical, clownish, childish. And of course, they have no clue why Trump won. They have no clue why Trump is successful, how he keeps going around them. Yeah, they have no clue why he's capable of counterpunching and making them look like the donkeys that they are. They have no clue why all their attempts to thwart him, as if that was their job in the mainstream media, for instance, to thwart the president, as opposed to just reporting the freaking news. They have no clue why it doesn't work. In fact, not only does it work, it's boomeranging back on them and making them look like idiots. And they haven't a clue. But more importantly, they haven't a clue how he got there in the first place. So cocksure with the liberals about Hillary's victory, or any Democrat for that matter. They have no idea what was going on behind their backs, but of course, they are lemmings anyway. They are sheeple, so being unaware is probably a normal state of existence for them. They had these narcissistic, arrogant, progressive putzes had T-shirts made saying, "It's not Hillary, you're just losing," or "Face it, Hillary won," or "Count the votes, Hillary won," whatever. All this stuff before and after the election. And at least electoral college-wise, which is the only way we're supposed to be voting for presidents, as we discussed in another video, Hillary got her clock cleaned. Now, a lot of the liberals will say, "Oh, well, she won the popular vote." Well, upon some recounts in some of the states that had a lot of their numbers skewed or missing or fooled with or what have you, turns out she may not have done that either. It may be that Donald Trump actually won the popular vote, maybe by this much, but if you're not a winner, if you're not first, you're last, as Ricky Bobby said. So, why are they out of their minds? And why did they miss this one so badly? Now, every election cycle, the Democrats predict the Democrat to win. The margins are usually laughable, just like most of their polls, and because they do them the same way. They're not really interested in the truth of a photograph, a picture of what's actually happening at the time they take the poll. They're actually interested in influencing people to go their direction. And that's why they skew the polls, and that's why they can't help but put out poll after poll after poll showing how poorly the Republican is doing against their vaunted Democratic candidate. But this time, they were literally betting the house on it. Celebrities promising to leave Canada, knowing they had no chance of having to leave Canada because they had no chance of losing. If Trump won, I mean. They had no chance of that happening. So what did they do? They doubled down, they stuck their noses out, they got onto thin branches, and it all fell down. And they cannot understand why. That night, take you back to November 8th, 2016, that night, seeing journalists crying on television, seeing these snowflake loser progressives weeping and sobbing at the mere fact that somehow, with all the hard belief that Hillary had no chance of losing against the schlub like this nobody of Donald Trump who was mean and he was misogynist, racist pig, and he said mean things. How could anyone vote for him? It wasn't going to happen, and it did. And that's because the liberals and the progressives and half the country fell for it again. And what did they fall for? What was the one thing that doomed them almost from the start? What was the one thing they could not get their heads around that led to the inexorable result that happened? There was one problem they had, and they still, even to this day, many of them do not understand it. The reason he lost was one reason, and one reason only. Hillary Clinton. Period. End of sentence. The reasons the Democrats lost was Hillary Clinton. Now, you're probably thinking, well, lots of things happened. I mean, she had the fix was in with Bernie and, the DNC and the this and the dossier and the blah, blah, blah. This is all stuff we know now. But we didn't know that then. And she still lost. Despite that fact, despite all the chicanery, she still lost. Because she's Hillary Clinton. Now, what is it about Hillary Clinton specifically? Well, to be honest, Hillary Clinton, and it's not even close, folks. Hillary Clinton was the most corrupt politician to ever campaign for the office of the presidency of the United States of America in the history of the country. Let me say that one more time. For those of you who were contemplating their navels at the time, Hillary Clinton was the most corrupt politician to ever run for the presidency of the United States in the history of the country. Bar none, not even close. Oh, but Jeff, what about all the corruption of Obama? And what about Watergate and Nixon? And what about blah, blah, blah? No. Nixon had a few problems before he became president. Most of his problems maybe after. Obama had problems before he was president. Most of his problems came after. Hillary has 42 years of history or so prior to the day she was being elected, or people were voting for her as president. 42 years of corruption. 42 years of a life in professional life in various jobs with her husband, Bill, doing corrupt things before she ever hoped to become president. It was all there. And we were going to talk about that because this is chapter 18, as I title it, The Clinton Crime Family. Now you're probably saying, but Jeff, the Clintons are old. They're not going to be in power anymore. What possible reason would you have for wanting to rake the Clintons over the coals at this late time in the game? It's like, well, they may be done, politically speaking, but that does not mean that they are not influencing anything. In fact, I would posit that the media, for instance, just to give you one major influence. I mean, today that the Clintons have caused the media to behave in a certain way and continue to behave that way. The Clintons normalized deviancy. The Clintons normalized lying as a means to an end. Of course, they're liberals, progressives, and the means always justifies, or the ends always justify the means here. But they took it to another level, all of which we'll get into. But one of the major things, as a for instance, is the influence they had on the media. Now, as I've mentioned in previous videos, the media has been corrupt forever. At least 100 years, they have been in the back pocket of the Democrat Party. But not 100%. There have been true journalists who just disseminate news, fair and balanced, you decide, holding on to that old journalistic measure of honesty and trustworthiness and fairness. But a few of them went sideways. As I mentioned in a previous video, Walter Cronkite, Edward R. Murrow, etc. There have been times in our past when the media has worked side by side with the Democrat Party to change the thinking of Americans, such as the time they conducted the big lie, working with Democrats to convince Americans that fascism was a right-wing ideology following its downfall or corruptibility through Adolf Hitler in the mid-1930s. And they've been trying to teach that ever since. The big switch, the big con in the 1960s, where the media, with the help, or the Democrats with the help of the media, tried to convince everybody that Republicans suddenly became the anti-black party, despite their history being pro-black, and that the Democrats were suddenly the pro-black party, despite their long history of being anti-black. Or their collusion in the 1960s again, where they basically helped get the Democrats fat out of the fire in regards to many social issues, and on and on and on and on. When Walter Cronkite decided to step out from behind the microphone as a fair and honest journalism, which he had a reputation for being, and comment on the Vietnam War, and then thought he could just go right back behind the microphone and become a fair and honest journalist again. And from that day forward, since the 60s, the media, taking their cue from the most trusted man in journalism, Walter Cronkite, good old Uncle Walter, decided that, oh yeah, well, if he can do it, we can do it, because he just made it okay. And so they beat up on Nixon, and they beat up on Reagan. But then came the Clintons. The Clintons boxed them into a corner, because while they had to help the Democrat, which was now the job of the mainstream media, apparently, although there was no real alternative media until, well, they were just starting, actually, alternative media in late 80s, 1990s. But that they felt that was their job, to carry the water of the Democrat Party. But at the same time, Clinton put them in boxes, in pigeonholes, in hard places that they couldn't crawl out from and still back the Democrat. He put them in untenable positions that forced them to have to make a choice. And what choice did the Democrat colluding mainstream media choose? They chose corruption. They chose Clinton. They chose lies and deceit. And from that moment forward, the American Journalist Society, the group of people who call themselves journalists in the mainstream media, not the alternative media, the mainstream media, ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, NPR, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Time Magazine, Newsweek, which is bye-bye, CNN, MSNBC, blah, 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 and blah, blah, MOUSE, almost across the board, 100% of the time is now completely given up, have now completely given up any semblance of journalistic objectivity. They have completely abandoned any idea that they are fair and balanced and simply disseminating the news for us to decide. Journalism is effectively dead. And they can thank the Clintons for it, because they took a biased media and made them corrupt and biased. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Hillary. So that's just one example of the influence of the Clintons that exists even to this day. Look at what they've done and are continuing to do with regard to Trump. False, fake news is now a thing. And it's a thing because the liberals in the news made it a thing. Now, if you think the Clintons are passé, I say this. Liberals are commonly ignoring history and continue to forget the lessons that history teaches. As a conservative, I rely on history quite a bit. And I like to remind people of history, especially when it's uncomfortable for them. Because this is how we can actually have an honest debate about anything. If we don't have our facts and figures, our dates and histories, if we don't have what came before, we cannot know what's going to happen in the future. Or we have no control over it. And we make the same stupid mistakes and keep stepping in the same pile of dog poop every single time. So to learn about the most corrupt couple that ever occupied political office, we must understand their history and why they are what they are, and remember all the things that they are before we start walking down that road about and excusing this kind of behavior in future politicians. The Clinton crime family, as I call them, are the most corrupt duo that ever existed in political history. They have more scandals that are worthy of criminal indictment and perhaps criminal prosecution and conviction than anyone. And actually, individually, they are far and away the most corrupt politicians to ever exist. And I say that knowing that Obama was the worst. We just had 8 years of the worst president in our history. And Carter was a close third, and maybe Clinton a close second. Politically speaking, the scandals that Obama had are numerous, but he doesn't hold a candle to the extent to which the Clintons strove for power, money, fame, legacy, and the rest. And in part 2, we're going to start to unravel what it is to be Clinton, to try to understand who they are, and then get into their egregious behavior, in case you all forgot. So we will see you in part 2.